Okay, so the recording started. Um, I am filming this at around 3 o'clock on Monday, and so no one is here, except for Katie. She's here, so I guess she's responsible for any questions that might get asked. Like last, if you have any questions, you can either save them for next time, which my schedule being really screwed up, I have no idea when next time at the regular 7 o'clock time will be. So it might just be better for you to text me those questions or to post them as a comment under the video. Um, so today is chapter 24. Chapter 24 is a really long chapter. Um, so that might actually be good because maybe this video will just end up being longer and I don't have to feel guilty about people not being here or about people being here too long. Um, so uh just to start off, the last chapter rather short. It was basically just about Sarah just died after the event of the Binding of Isaac, which we discussed a little bit about the age last time, so I won't go over that again. Um, but we'll see once we get to the end of this. This story does seem to be thematically connected with the story of Rebecca dying, and but then there was a big conversation that Abraham had with the Hittites about the purchase of a cave. So today is the subject line for the title is Isaac and Rebecca, but as you'll see, it's really not about Isaac almost at all. It's a bit about Rebecca, but it's more about Abraham's servant and his journey. And so let's just get into it.
Chapter 24. Now Abraham was old, well advanced in years, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things.
So just right off that, the context of this story is that sentence about Abraham being old. Um, and we should probably think of this as Abraham thinking that he's about to die, possibly. And we'll see that with other statements that get made here in a second. Um, and also, it really that and the Lord blessed Abraham in all things. I think that should really be taken as at this stage in his life, um, Abraham has an expectation about how his relationship with the Lord kind of works, and we see his view of that expectation in his conversation that he has with his servant. Um,
And Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who had charge of all that he had,
oh, and also the servant is never named in this passage, but as mentioned before, it is probably the same servant um, that got referenced previously in Genesis 15, which is Eleazar. So this is probably our boy Eleazar. We don't actually know, but whatever.
put your hand under my thigh, that I may make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and God of the earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I dwell, but will go to my country and to my kindred, and take a wife for my son Isaac.
Okay, so a couple things in this little passage. One, the put your hand under my thigh, kind of a weird way to kind of swear an oath, but obviously is implying like an intimacy and of like showing the seriousness of the situation. Um, Possibly could be even weirder because in uh in Hebrew, there's a lot of euphemisms for things. And so there, especially whenever it comes to like legs and feet and everything, you see this in like the story of Ruth and other things. So the hand under your thigh might be actually a reference to kind of put your hand like near like near Abraham's genitals, possibly. And the significance of that would be is like it would almost be like swearing upon Abraham's circumcision. And like the reason for that is because the like his mission is related to Abraham's circumcision, right? Because yeah, it's like the continuation of his line. And so, yes, we obviously think that this is very weird. Maybe they wouldn't have, maybe they would thought it was weird, or maybe that would have brought about more seriousness. Who knows? But even if it's just the under his thigh, and you still kind of have a little bit of that connotation. And so that seems to be part of what it is. Second, what is Abraham asking for here? He is asking him to specifically find him a wife that is not a Canaanite. Okay. Why is he asking that? Well, we have to. We're well into speculation territory here, and we have to speculate because we don't have a clear answer as to why he's thinking this way. But it seems pretty obvious that the thing that Abraham is trying to avoid is he's trying to avoid for his son Isaac what happened with him and Hagar and Ishmael, right? He's trying to avoid that and wants there to not be confusion about like who is the proper son.
The continuation of like the promise.
Of like the promised line, right? And so to do that, he wants someone to be from his kinsman, right? Okay, and we'll continue on.
The servant said to him, "Perhaps the woman may not be willing to follow me to this land. Must I then take your son to the land from which you came?" Abraham said to him, "See to it that you do not take my son back there. The Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, and who spoke to me and swore to me, 'To your offspring I will give this land,' he will send his angel before you, and you shall take a wife for my son from there."
Okay, so the servant's response is, right, because again, the context of the situation is they think that Abraham might be, because he's old, he might be dying soon. And so he's like, well, what if I come back? Or like, what if I go there and she won't come with me to here? Should I come back and take your son up there? Well, obviously, if he again, we see kind of Abraham's underlying motivations, and that he's like, no, do not do that, because the whole point of is the preservation of God's promise. And God promised it would be like my line in this land. And so you can't try and, so again, right? This is Abraham, a little bit older, a little bit wiser. You can't try to fix God's plan. You can't try to be like, oh, God's plan was this, and he said that, but that option is not on the table, so we'll fix it by bringing the son back. No. He's got to stay here, all right? If that doesn't work, then something else will like, if this plan, something else will happen, but that's definitely like an integral part is you staying here, or is him staying here, right?
It's like
And
he's trying to tell him not to try to do loopholes.
exactly. And but then the other thing that he says is why he's pretty sure that it will work is because he will his angel before you. You shall take a wife from my son there, right? He's confident that it will work. Why? Because God will send an angel before him. How does Abraham know that God will send an angel before him? Well, you could assume that they had a conversation, but if you assume that, the text could have just said that. Personally, I think it is because this is another thing of Abraham's experience with God. Why does he think he'll send an angel before him? Because God sent an angel before him pretty much every other time that Abraham did something, right? With the Lot situation, there was literally an angel that walked before Abraham. Like when dealing with Abimelech, Abraham had an assumption about how it should go. He did the whole thing where he's going to lie about his wife. The angel of God showed up in a dream of Abimelech and made the whole thing work out. And so he's like, I don't know how this is going to go, but he's going to send an angel before you and make that work. Don't worry about it. This is actually the only reference to an angel in this particular story, which I think is very interesting, that Abraham has this confidence that the angel of the Lord will be sent before him and bring success to his servant, but we actually don't ever see that angel actively doing something. But it should be noted that just because we don't actively see the angel doing something doesn't mean that the angel hasn't already done something or is doing something. Like right? Makes sense? Okay.
But if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this oath of mine. Only you must not take my son back there.
Right? He said, if it doesn't work out, don't worry about it all following through. I must have been wrong, or God has some other plan. But don't take my son there.
So the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master, and swore to him concerning this matter. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and departed, taking all sorts of choice gifts from his master.
So again, it's taking camels, which makes sense that Abraham would have camels, because we think that he's a sojourner and he moves around, and camels mostly used for moving around and caravans and stuff like that.
And he's pretty rich at this point, right?
Yes, he's rich at this point.
He arose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor.
Okay. Went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. So one big debate about where this is. So it says, so the text says the city of Nahor. I don't really know where the city of Nahor is. The one, let's do the yeah, because let's do the share my screen thing. Yeah, okay, cool. So this commentary, which is a commentary that I've been referencing a lot, he definitely sees the city of Nahor. He just has it straight as the city of Nahor being Ur of the Chaldeans, which is very far. And it personally, I don't even know why you would think that that's where he would be going, because the text itself says that that they says that Terah, who is Abraham's father, left there, and the Nahor that he's going to meet is not. So there are two Nahors. Okay, so there's a Nahor that is Terah's father, and then there's the Nahor that is Abraham's brother. And so, if it's the Nahor that is Terah's father, maybe that Nahor is still living in But if it's the Nahor that is Terah's son, that Nahor is probably living somewhere near like Haran or whatever, which is where the Bible says that Terah actually moves to with Abraham, and Abraham actually leaves like he lives there in Terah with Terah for a while and then leaves.
His dad, Terry.
Yeah, his dad Terah. We were, I think that's in Genesis like 12 or something like that. I might have that wrong, but it's something like that. And so I think it's more likely. Let me see if I can, now that I have this up, can I find images? Yeah. I think it's much more likely that Nahor is in this region and even on the Wikipedia page, it lists the city of Nahor as in halfway around the Fertile Crescent, which this whole thing is the Fertile Crescent, and it's up top here. That would coincide with, remember we talked about this other theory that that got put forward in academic papers, that Abraham is not from Ur, which would be here, because Ur is like down here near the Persian Gulf, but is from a different city that's called Ura, which is like more up here in like the northern part, which also would explain more of why, like, when the Babylonian kings, which are from this region, come and attack Sodom and Gomorrah and the kings in this region, why Abraham doesn't side with them. Instead, he fights with them because he's technically not their kinsman. He's kinsman with people up here more in the north. And he's probably a merchant prince descended from the people that are up here rather than descended from the people that are down here. And it would also make sense that if this is where his relatives are, his kinsmen are up here. And so he's not going to go all the way back down here to Ur, but instead just going to go up here to look for a wife from his kinsman, right? So bit of debate about what that is, but again, this whole region is like Mesopotamia, so like it all counts. I think, right? I think Mesopotamia actually even means like between the two rivers or something like that. I might have that wrong, but whatever, doesn't matter. So let's stop sharing the screen because that was all I wanted to show you guys. Okay, so back to it.
And he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at the time of evening.
Oh, but I just also wanted to highlight the idea of the city of Nahor being both, again, it's the same thing we see all the time. It's a person name, but it's also a place name. And probably also the name of like the whole like tribe that's living there, right? The collective identification.
The time when women go out to draw water. And he said, O Lord, God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show steadfast love to my master Abraham.
Okay, I'm going to finish this paragraph, but we're going to talk a bunch about that sentence.
Behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Let the young woman to whom I shall say, please let down your jar that I may drink, and who shall say, drink and I will water your camel. Let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master.
Okay, so this chapter is very repeating, and as we go down further low, like a bunch of things will just get repeated of like stuff that we've already said. But there's a couple of themes that I want to really harp on and identify. So if we open up our Step Bible apps and we go to that phrase of verse 12. Okay. So here's what I want to talk about that's so interesting. So a couple things. One, as we're reading conversations in this chapter, Notice the use of the word Lord, and that's Yahweh, right? So it's a lot of references to Yahweh. Two, I think this is just something I think is really interesting, where it says, please grant me success today. If you click on that word success, it's actually panim, which is the Hebrew word for face, which is a thing that we've referenced a bunch in Genesis, where it says something like, so and so walked before the face of the Lord. And basically what that means is that they were really good at that thing, right? So it says like Nimrod was a great hunter before the face of the Lord. What it means, like he was really good. He was successful at that, right? So we have this same kind of Hebrew idiom about being before. And so he's asking for the Lord, please, please. And whenever it says like, grant me, says like to meet, like show me, or like some translations will say like show me success or whatever, and then you're saying show me your face, Lord, show me your face today, and that as being a way of asking for success in this thing, right? So almost the same, tying those ideas with like almost like being blessed kind of a thing about seeing the face of the Lord. And this is the other thing that I really want to harp on, show steadfast love to my master Abraham. So if you click on steadfast love, that is the Hebrew word hesed. Okay.
Real quick.
Yes.
Does the whole face thing have to do with the saving face idiom we have?
Possibly, yeah, because like if you're saving face, whenever you're saving face, what you're doing is you're
It has to do with like trying to keep your honor.
yeah, keep your honor and to not be degraded. So it's like you're not being unsuccessful. Like
Yeah.
saving face allows you to maintain like your level of like status, right? So yeah, those are definitely, I would think that those are definitely connected ideas. But so Hesed. So I'm sure we have all heard the phrase in the Bible about like steadfast love or a loving kindness. I think if you read it in like the King James, it'll say loving kindness, And Hesed is a very interesting word, and I'm just going to bring it. We're just going to go to the Wikipedia page for. Oh well, let's show. Let's do it again. Show the screen. Come on. Let's get wild. Yeah. So okay. So Hesed, right? So there's a big thing about this word being extremely difficult to translate, because it's encapsulating a lot of different ideas. And so if you can see here, so I'll highlight this part, it says it occurs 248 times in the Hebrew Bible. And the majority of cases, the King James translates it as mercy. The Septuagint, that little LLX right there stands for Septuagint. Elios, which is mercy. But it's also translated kindness, loving kindness, goodness, kindly, merciful, favor, good, pity, earth, or goodness, pity. But there's also two instances where it's used in a negative sense, and those are Proverbs 14:34, and as were translated as almost reproach, or as a wicked thing or detested thing in Leviticus 20:17. So it's one of these. It's interesting that it's used a lot, and it gets translated as a lot of different words and a lot of different related ideas, but there's also this sense in which it's possible to mean kind of a bad thing. And I think there's somewhere in here where it says that a guy translates it. Let me see. Where's covenant? Yes. So, a political theorist has suggested that hesed cannot be easily translated to English and that it means something like loving covenant obligation. I would almost think loving covenant obligation and connection are kind of like the totality of the view of what's thought of whenever the word hesed is used. There's a really good 5-minute whatever, I can't find it. There's a really good 5-minute Bible Project video on the word hesed, which I would highly recommend you guys watch. I thought about just showing it during this, but I want to try and limit this to an hour, and so we'll skip that. But I'm actually going to try and use the 2 instances of the negative connotations of the words to help you show what I mean by loving covenant obligation and connection. And so if we go to Proverbs 14, I'm just doing that right now. Oh crud. Let's do it in Step Bible. Proverbs 14:34. Oh, it's taking a while to load. Okay. So the word so in Proverbs that verse is, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. And it's the word reproach that is the Hebrew word hesed there. Okay. And you have sin. So you have, but sin is a hesed to any people. Right. And that's weird that sin would be a loving kindness to a people. But if you think back about what sin is and you tie it to when sin really gets first reference, which is the Cain and Abel story, and I talked about that story about how it says sin is crouching at the door and like it kind of wants to have you, it wants to mate with you. It's the same kind of idea of sin. Yes, sin wants to have that intimate, like deep connection with you. And so sin has that with the whole people. And so in that, well, if we compare it to what righteousness does, what is righteousness? Righteousness in that verse exalts a nation. So righteousness lifts up a nation, whereas sin draws a people down into itself in almost like a sexual way.
And it shows the
Right.
dark side of you can't just follow sexual stuff because there's like a dark.
There's a dark aspect to it that
It can be
consumes
bad.
it. Yes. And so that's the way it has. Now, if you look at the other reference, it's going to be a very similar kind of idea. So let's now go to Leviticus 20:17. Leviticus 20:17. So Leviticus 20:17. If a man takes his sister, a daughter of his father or a daughter of his mother, and sees her nakedness, and she sees his nakedness, it is a disgrace. That word disgrace is hesed. It is a hesed. And they shall be cut off from the sight of their children and of their people. So it's actually the same kind of idea, and actually even relating it to incest in a way, which is interesting because it literally says if a man takes his sister, a daughter of his father, which is exactly what Abraham did with Sarah. Sarah is a daughter of his father. But I guess we're properly in the law now here. But it is a hesed, and it is and why would they translate it as a disgrace? Because of the follow-up, which is, and they shall be cut off from the sight of their children. Right. The whole thing that they're doing, that they're trying to avoid, is being cut off. That's the thing that they're trying to avoid, right? But if you do this, like intimate sexual sin, that will lead to you being cut off from your people, right? But most of the time that the word hesed gets used is in relationship to God's hesed for people, and in particular for Abraham. And you can go watch that video about it, but kind of the idea that the last sort of takeaway that I want you to get from hesed is that really what is happening is God is displaying his hesed to us that has its ultimate fulfillment in Christ, and we are supposed to respond with hesed to God. This is why maybe you guys have heard me harp on whenever we talk about salvation and how I'm like, okay, it's not really belief in God, but Dr. Heiser for a while used this phrase of believing loyalty, and that's why hesed has this idea of loyal love or steadfast love. And I now prefer the term allegiance, because allegiance in my mind kind of encapsulates a lot of these ideas of you have love for whatever you have allegiance to, you are loyal, you are devoted to it, and you submit to it in all of those different ways. That's kind of what I see allegiance as being as. But so what it is it's God has hesed for us, and we are supposed to display hesed back to God. And in my opinion, you display that hesed back to God by having allegiance to God. Okay? All right. All that makes sense? Okay. I got one nod from the only person in the room, so I'm at 100%.
Let's go.
Got 100% buy-in on that. All right, let's go back to the text. Okay, and here we go.
Chapter 24.
No.
Now Abraham was old.
No.
Advanced in years. The Lord had blessed Abraham in all things.
Crud. I don't want to repeat because oh no. Yeah, it screwed me up switching around like that. All right, screw it. That means I have to read it. Before he had, and by this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love, hesed, to my master. Before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with her water jar on her shoulder. The young woman was very attractive in appearance, a maiden whom no man had known. She went down to the spring and filled her jar and came up. Then the servant ran to meet her and said, "Please give me a little water to drink from your jar." She said, "Drink, my lord," and she quickly let down her jar upon her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw water for your camels also until they have finished drinking." So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran again to the well to draw water, and she drew for his camels. The man gazed at her in silence to learn whether the Lord Yahweh had prospered his journey or not. Okay. So one of the comments that I kind of wanted to make about this is that people will often talk about like biblical dating or whatever, right? And the thing is that
Biblical dating is sending your server.
and that's the problem with the whole idea of biblical dating is it doesn't exist. Like there's really no references to it. But it's always funny to me that the closest thing that you have to somewhat of an idea of biblical dating is this story. And like it's basically this in Ruth. Like that's kind of it. There really isn't much in the way of like
And they're both very arranged.
yes, and they're both very arranged. Well, Ruth isn't so much.
Naomi tells her to do it.
Yeah, Naomi tells her to do it. Ruth asks Obed or Boaz. Yeah, whatever. I meant Boaz's name, but like ask Boaz out, which is like, oh, that's not how it's supposed to go, and like all this stuff. And so you actually have no instances where a guy asks a girl out, or even there's no guys asking for girls' hands in marriages to the girl. The only other instances that you have is like Jacob talking to Laban, who we will actually meet in this chapter. And so, but anyways, I think it's funny that basically the servant just goes with like because the servant's first pick is just the hottest girl. right because like what does it say? The young woman was very attractive in appearance, but it's before he had finished speaking, so before the servant had finished his request to God, this girl was walking out, and it was around the same time, right, that right, because he says, behold, I'm standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out. So there's a multitude of women coming out, but who's the one that he talks to? It's the attractive one. But he doesn't know if that's going to work. But that's who he asks first. It's funny that then she displays the character that he's looking for, right? His test, his sign that he asks for God is a character test of the person. Is the person willing to go above and beyond what might be required of general hospitality? So again, we have this theme that we've had in a lot of Genesis about hospitality being a indicator of a person's character and of their like relationship to Christ, or to God rather, because they're not thinking of it as a relationship to Christ. But
she goes beyond what even his beyond was, because he said for her to give water for him to drink and his camels a drink. And she goes, not only will I give your camels a drink, I'll give them water until they aren't drinking anymore.
Yeah, until they're finished drinking. Yes.
Yeah, and so imagine how much that would be, because how camels work is they store all the water, so they're probably empty of water, and so it's going to take them a lot of drinks. And so I feel like
it's a lot of work
beyond of what he thought.
Sure. And then you have this line of the man gazed at her in silence to learn whether the Lord had prospered his journey or not. So that's another like interesting line there, because you would think, well, he asked for a sign. The sign seems to be fulfilled. Wouldn't he just immediately know that the Lord prospered his journey and that this is it? Well, technically at this stage, he doesn't know if he knows that she's attractive. He knows that she has good character, but he doesn't know, is she a kindred or a kinsman of my master. That's what he doesn't know. And so that's what he's still wondering about. So then we continue on. When the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold ring weighing half a shekel and 2 bracelets for her arms weighing 10 gold shekels, and said, "Please tell me whose daughter you are. Is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night?" And she said to him, "I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor." She added, "We have plenty of both straw and fodder and room to spend the night." The man bowed his head and worshiped the Lord and said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his steadfast love and faithfulness towards my master." Right? His steadfast love, his hesed, and faithfulness towards my master. "For as for me, the Lord has led me in the way to the house of my master's kinsman." Right? So again, like I said, we don't see any active participation of the angel, but he's attributing his success to the Lord providing.
Yeah.
To my master's kinsman. Then the young woman ran and told her mother's household about these things. Okay. Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban. Laban ran out towards the man to the spring. As soon as he saw the rings and the bracelets on his sister's arms and heard the words of Rebekah his sister, "Thus the man spoke to me," referring to the servant. He went to the man, and behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring. He said, "Come in, O blessed of the Lord." Blessed of the Lord is Yahweh there. Blessed of Yahweh, why do you stand outside? For I have prepared the house and a place for the camels. So the man came to the house and unharnessed the camels and gave straw and fodder to the camels, and there was water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. All right, so the servant is able to provide for all of his caravan at their household. Then food was set before him to eat. He said, "I will not eat until I have said what I have to say." He said, so this would be Laban, "Speak on." So you have a very interesting interaction here with Laban. So one, we've talked a little bit about, does Abraham know the Tetragrammaton? Does he know the name of God, Yahweh? I've been arguing that the answer is probably not. This, and even though in this story, Yahweh gets used a lot, I think if you just read the story carefully, you can see why I would think that the use of Yahweh is a bit anachronistic here. Because even if you think that Abraham does know God, that God's name is Yahweh, how does Laban know that God's name was Yahweh? Because Laban lives in a different city and hasn't had any interaction with Abraham. And Abraham would have come to that knowledge after having left his father's house. And one of the only other references to Nahor that we have actually is in Joshua. Oh, where's the verse? So let me I can make sure that I have this. If I open up Nahor, let's just Google Nahor reference in Joshua. Joshua 24:2. So let's open that up real quickly. Joshua 24:2. And Joshua said to all the people, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, Long ago, your fathers lived beyond the Euphrates, Terah, the father of Abraham and of Nahor, and they served other gods. So who served other gods? Terah and Terah, the father of Abraham and Nahor, and they served other gods. So Terah, son Nahor, son Laban, they probably serve other gods besides Yahweh. And yet in this story of Laban, we have references to Laban saying, "Oh, blessed of Yahweh." And so it seems pretty clear to me that it's an anachronistic taking of the name of the Lord and applying it to what Nahor is saying here. Anachronistic means taking something that is from like the present day or from the future and applying it to somebody in the past, even though they wouldn't have done exactly that. So whoever writing at the time, whenever he's writing what Nahor is saying, is putting in a reference to Yahweh, even though Laban himself probably didn't use that. If he used anything, he might have used like Elyon for like God Most High, or probably would have used his own name of whatever god he served or something like that. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And then the other thing that I want to get from this is you see a hint about Laban's character in this, because Laban is lavishing all of these goods upon the servant and saying all of this stuff and being really nice to him and saying and being really kind to him after he witnesses the rings and the bracelets that are on Rebecca's arms, right? Laban is being kind because his relative is rich. You're going to see this same thing whenever Laban shows up again, whenever Jacob comes back, because Laban does the same thing to Jacob. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to be very kind to you, Jacob. Come into my household and work for me and do all of this stuff, and then I'll give you stuff and blah, 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 blah." And so Laban should really be thought of as like your kind of rich, sleazy uncle who like he's family, so like work with him and stuff, but understand that he's kind of a rich sleaze, and so like he's gonna probably try and take advantage of you, right? Kind of a thing. Okay, so you have going on with Laban. Okay, continuing on. And so he said, we're just making sure I'm still recording. Okay, yeah. And so he said, "I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has greatly blessed my master, and he has become great. He has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male servants and female servants, camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master. And when she was old, and said to him, he has given all that he has. My master made me swear, saying, 'You shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose land I dwell, but you shall go to my father's house and to my clan and take a wife for my son.' And I said to my master, 'Perhaps the woman will not follow me.'" Again, we're repeating a lot of conversations here, so I'm not going to do too much commentary on this. "But he said to me, 'The Lord before whom I have walked will send his angel with you and prosper your way. You shall take a wife for my son from my clan and from my father's house, and then you will be free from my oath when you come to my clan. And if they will not give her to you, you will be free from my oath. I came today to the spring and said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, if now you are prospering the way that I go, behold, I am standing by the spring of the water. Let the virgin who comes out to draw water, to whom I shall say, please give me a little water from your jar to drink, and who shall say to me, drink, and I will draw for your camels also. Let her be the woman whom the Lord has appointed for my master's son.
I think it's funny that he just repeats everything.
He's straight repeating everything. Like we could have skipped all of this with just, he told him what happened that day. Before I had finished speaking in my heart, behold, Rebekah came out with her water on her shoulder, and she went down to the spring and drew water. I said to her, please let me drink. She quickly let down her jar from her shoulder and said, drink, I will give your camels drink also. So I drank, and she gave the camels drink also. And then I said to her, whose daughter are you? She said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son.
I can take over now.
Yeah. Whom Milcah bore to him. And then I came inside and talked to you. And so I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her arms. And then I bowed my head and worshiped the Lord and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me by the right way to take the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. Now then, if you are going to show hesed, steadfast love, and faithfulness to my master, tell me. And if not, tell me that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. Right? So he went through all this jibber jabber about everything that happened. And he's now putting it back on Laban and going, are you now going to show hesed to Abraham? And then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, the thing has come from the Lord. We cannot speak to you bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go. Let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken. So that's an interesting thing to me of them being like, we don't know how this is all going to happen. But precisely why he's laying out everything that he's doing is he's laying out everything that occurred so that they understand that it's from God.
Yeah.
Right? And that he's laying it all out there, showcasing how
accreditation that he's not lying.
Well, to show to try and give himself credit, cred and credibility that he is not lying and that the Lord is making this happen. And what I think it's also doing is because if I said, if you compare what just happened with the servant reading all of this stuff to Abraham at the beginning of this chapter, and I said, don't have a story of Abraham doing all of this talking back and forth with God about the angel, all of this stuff going to occur. Abraham just says it. And so we have an interesting kind of dynamic where we have a person that is experienced in walking with God who just does and says, this is what the Lord is going to do, versus a person who is inexperienced with walking with the Lord, who is having to recount everything that happens and is having to and trying to ask for signs and trying to be like, okay, I need this to happen, and I need this to happen, and I need this to happen, which Abraham was like that at one point, right? Abraham's like, well, how do I know? Give me a sign, God. And Abraham's like, give me something. And so God does the whole thing with the covenant and the splitting of the animals, and then he walks through it. And you have this idea, which I think is a good, healthy idea of how we should think about asking for signs, which personally actually works with my own life testimony. Whenever I was younger, I really felt the need for asking for signs from God. And he, in my opinion, fulfilled those signs. And as I've gotten older, I more and more have thought I really shouldn't be asking for signs anymore. Like at this point, asking for signs is actually kind of
It's kind of
lazy, it's kind of insulting, and it's just kind of immature at this point. But you have that, but it's not like it's terrible. It's not a terrible thing to do,
not really necessary.
but it's not really necessary, right?
You know.
And it's a display of immature or of experience versus lack of experience in walking with the Lord.
And there's like certain things where I'm like, oh, well, maybe this like crazy thing I might want to sign for because I'm really not sure if I'm supposed to do it.
Sure.
Like for all these other things that I would used to like, no, like I know better. Now.
Right. Exactly. But and also you so and then in this statement, this kind of what I'm going to call a non-blessing from Laban and Bethuel, right? Because right, you would think that like if you're sending off your daughter to like be married to somebody, right? You have this idea of giving a blessing, right? And giving a blessing, and they're kind of explicitly giving a non-blessing here. What they're doing is they're saying, well, it seems very much so that from your perspective and based off of what everything that you're saying is, this is from God. But we're not in a position to confirm that. But we don't want to potentially go against God. And so we're going to take a middle neutral ground and not bless you, but also not bless you. And so take Rebecca and, let it be as you say the Lord has said.
Yeah.
And in return, we'll take a little dowry and some stuff from you, because that's probably like that's going to be what some of those caravans and camels, and like he's not taking them for anything. Like I'm sure a dowry was like exchanged. Well, and actually I think it says that in like this next verse a little bit. But yeah, and so it says, when Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself to the earth before the Lord God. And the servant brought out jewelry of silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave, and here we go. And he also gave to her brother and to her mother costly ornaments. And he and the men who were with them ate and drank, and they spent the night there. When they arose in the morning, he said, "Send me away to my master." Her brother and mother said, "Let the young," and then this is one of the things I think is funny. "Let the young woman remain with us a while, at least 10 days. After that, she may go." But he said to them, "Do not delay me, since the Lord has prospered my way. Send me away that I may go to my master." They said, "Let us call the young woman and ask her." Right? So this is actually a thing that's going to happen again with Laban later on with Jacob. And it kind of shows, again, their sleaziness, right? Because they've made this agreement. They weren't willing to fully bless it, but they're definitely willing to accept all of the gifts. But then whenever it comes time to actually cement the gift and let Rebecca go, they're like, "Oh, well, hold on now. Let's not be so hasty. How about she stays for a while? And what's her opinion on it?" And so it suddenly becomes, beforehand, whenever we were discussing this and you were accepting gifts, you didn't really care what Rebecca's opinion was on the whole thing. But now all of a sudden you care about what Rebecca's opinion is on the thing.
Yeah.
And so it's a way of being of understanding that it's like, just because somebody says something that sounds nice, they might not be saying it for actually good reasons. They might be saying it because they're trying to get more out of the situation, right? Because maybe if Rebecca just says no, well, then they can keep all of the gifts. And then when Rebecca attracts, because she's hot, can attract somebody else in the future, they can get more gifts out of her.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe they can maybe they can leverage like their hot sister and daughter even more.
Yeah.
Right? And so you
which isn't good, but that's what they're like trying to do.
right, that's what they're trying to do. And they called Rebecca and said to her, "Will you go with this man?" And she said, "I will go." And so they sent Rebecca, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men, and they blessed Rebecca and said to her. So now they don't have a choice, right? Rebecca's like going, and so now they bless her and they say, "Our sister, may you become thousands of 10,000s. May your offspring possess the gates of those who hate him." Which is kind of a line that I just really like. Possess the gates of those who hate him. And then Rebecca and her young women arose and rode on the camels and followed the man. Thus the servant took Rebecca and went his way. Now Isaac had returned from Beer Ilaharo. I don't know how to actually say that. And was dwelling in the Negev. So again, the southern kind of deserty region. It's going to be near Beersheba, but it's a different spot. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward evening. And he lifted his eyes and saw, and behold, there were camels coming. And Rebekah lifted her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from the camel and said to the servant, "Who is that man walking in the field to meet us?" The servant said, "It is my master." And so she took her veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. And then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah his mother, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. And so Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. So we've already basically gone an hour. There isn't much that I wanted to say on this last part, but just to say, like, it's not until the very end that Isaac shows up. Isaac really isn't like the main kind of like character in this story. But you have so one is it's unclear to me as to what the time frame is supposed to be, especially whenever it says the sentence, and like they meet. The servant told Isaac everything that he had done, and then Isaac brought her into the tent, and she became his wife, and he loved her. Like, that's a quick turnaround on the meet, but like there might be more like of a time delay in that portion where like they do something more of a ceremony or whatever, like before they're actually married. I doubt it was like a 20-minute interaction and then there's like, oh, we're going for it. But I also, again, I said that I do think that this story seems to be related to the idea of Sarah's death, because the last sentence is, so Isaac was comforted after his mother's death.
Yeah.
And so that seems to be the line that is kind of bookending this story and kind of connects it to his mother's death.
Like why it happened then.
And why it happened then, why it happened at that time. And so we don't fully know what the time delay is between like the binding of Isaac, his mother's death, and then Rebecca showing up. We just know that there are some that they're all kind of related ideas. But that's all I have. Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. And if anybody else has any questions, like I said, questions or comments or things that you want to point out, you can leave it as a comment, or you can just talk to me about it whenever you see me. And there we go. Thanks.